Hello, everyone. I'm Jim Garrison. I want to welcome you to this session of Humanity Rising. I'm in Indian Wells, which is right outside of Palm Springs in Southern California for the Contact in the Desert annual conference that for many years has been the largest gathering of people dedicated to UFO, UAP disclosure in the world. They have sold out this year. I was told when I arrived last night, over 4,000 people have gathered, mostly from around the United States, but also from around the world. The UAP disclosure luminaries are all here, one of whom I'll be introducing in a moment. And there was a lot of excitement. I had the opportunity to have dinner last night with a number of people, including Diane Hennessy Powell, who is now very well known for her participation in the telepathy tapes as one of the leading researchers on the clairvoyance of the autists. I saw Richard Dolan, who's here, Stephen Bassett, Russ Coulthart, Linda Moulton Howe is here. It's a real gathering of the great personages that have distinguished themselves in some cases over decades now as the most closely held secret in the history of the world has slowly, painstakingly eked its way into the light. There's excitement in the air because people are full of expectation that this is the moment soon approaching where full disclosure will be upon us. I want to note the context before we begin because it speaks to the extraordinary contradiction in the United States as we live out what it means to be a great power. You know, one of the characteristics of great powers is waste. They waste because they can. You know, flying in from San Francisco yesterday, it was extraordinary how the desert begins to just envelop the landscape as you go into Southern California. So we're in the desert, parched under normal conditions, and you get out of the airplane and you walk through the airport and there's all these fountains with water. And then you drive to the resort in which we're having the conference, and you come into the entrance and there's these massive fountains and waterfalls and so forth. And you begin to take in that in the middle of the desert, there is this commitment to showing that it doesn't matter, that Americans can do whatever they want in defiance of nature. I understand that millions of gallons are used every day to water all the golf courses that are here that cater to the wealthy from the Los Angeles area, which is just north of us. So I want to just give a sense of contradiction as we begin the program today, that it's all being drawn from the Colorado River. The Colorado River, which used to be one of the major rivers in the world, so much water is drawn out that it's literally dry by the time it reaches the Mexican border, which is another aspect of the great power. We keep all the water, and the other people don't get any because we don't share, because we need the water for our golf courses and the fountains. And so as an American citizen, I thought I would start with that observation and an apology for the kind of profligacy that characterize our nation at this moment when the ecological matrix within within which we find ourselves is literally on the verge of collapse because of what we're doing in Palm Springs, among many other things. So it's within this contradiction that we're bringing people together, and it's exciting nevertheless. As Whitehead said, you know, the Christ is crucified and the fairies dance. It's the worst of times and it's the best of times, and things are getting better and better and worse, faster and faster in our world. So from this contact in the desert convening, I thought it would be good to just generally summarize where we are in the momentum toward disclosure. And I'm going to make one general comment that I think is really important for us to hold. Then I'll introduce our special guest for today. And that is that for the last 80 years, the pressure for disclosure was focused on the US government as the curator of the information that it knew existed but was repressing in the public domain. And the general thinking was that unless and until the US government disclosed that somehow it wasn't really real and it really wasn't going to happen. I think that the reality of our world is that that phase is coming to an end. It's certainly been the case that the US government and the UAP Records Collection Act of December of 2023 and other legislative initiatives, one of which is in the US Congress as we speak, which I'll talk about later in the program, are taking place. But I think the deeper reality is that the cat is out of the bag. And while the government, not only in the United States, but internationally, continues to be an important aspect of disclosure, the leading actor is really the public. The principal area of disclosure now, I think, is happening in the public domain. Ubiquity University, with our extraterrestrial studies program, in partnership with transdimensional mapping and Birdie Jaworski, is an example of the kind of activity that's happening in the public domain, completely independently operating from any kind of government strictures or government permission or government supervision in any way. The public is now just getting involved. Chris Bledsoe and the work that he's been doing, Chris, you all know, is another example. Jason Barber and his Skywatcher company is happening outside government. It works with government, but it's independent of government. And so this is one of the reasons why I think there's such a spirit of exuberance in the conference here at Contact in the Desert, is this feeling that not only is the truth coming out, but the people are finally in charge. And as Michio Kaku said, the onus is no longer on those that believe in UFOs to prove it. The onus now is on those that don't believe it to prove it's not true. That's the milestone. That's the transitional moment in which we find ourselves. So it's within this context that I'd like to introduce my good friend and colleague, Birdie Jaworski. I met her at the entrance of the hotel about 45 minutes ago. We had a cup of tea. I told her we were going to be doing Humanity Rising, and she said, why don't I join? So as you know, Birdie is our partner in the extraterrestrial studies program. She's doing a whole series of courses. We're preparing some courses that she'll describe in a moment. But I'd like to turn it over now to Birdie for her to give us her perspective, and then I'll circle back when she's done and conclude the program with some additional comments of my own. So thank you, everyone. Welcome to Humanity Rising from Contact in the Desert. And I'm going to vacate my chair here because we're in a hotel room and we don't have a lot of room to maneuver, and turn it over to Birdie.
Good morning, everyone, and greetings from Contact in the Desert. This is the largest UFO conference in the entire world every year, and everybody who's anybody attends. And so it's a place to go and meet all of your favorite researchers, a place to learn exciting, groundbreaking new information, and also a place just to hang out with old friends. And so I'm looking forward to spending the next 5 days with everyone that I've ever met in the field and everyone that I'm going to meet, all kinds of new exciting people. I had an interesting trip down. I drove from Albuquerque, New Mexico, and in my car was Linda Moulton Howe, one of the most well-known UFO researchers on the planet. She has been in the field for decades. Her groundbreaking work on cattle mutilations won her an Emmy Award. She has been doing all kinds of incredible research all of these decades, and she lives in my city. And she needed a ride, so we were Thelma and Louise all the way down to Contact in the Desert. We had a ball just talking about everything, wondering what's going on with disclosure, sharing our theories and ideas. So it was an exciting start to this wonderful weekend. So happy to be here with everybody, and especially with Jim, my dear friend. But I wanted to update you on some exciting events that we have coming up. This Sunday, if you're not here at Contact in the Desert, and even if you are, I am holding a workshop, and it begins at 11 a.m. Pacific time, and it's called Through Their Eyes, and it's my look at the ET abduction phenomenon. This is something that I spent around 5 years working on, and I did over 300 trans-dimensional mapping remote viewing sessions, looking at the ET abduction phenomenon, not from the human perspective, but from the perspective of the ETs themselves. And what I discovered is going to absolutely shock you, because it shocked me, and I thought I'd read and heard and seen it all. I'm going to share tons of my remote viewing examples and talk about what's going on. Who are these beings? What's really happening here? What are people truly experiencing? I think this is a groundbreaking study, and I hope that you join us. You can find out about this workshop at ubiquityuniversity.org. And also in August 4th through the 9th in Wilmington, North Carolina, home of Chris Bledsoe, Chris and I are going to be holding an absolutely incredible 5-day retreat. 5 glorious days in North Carolina. You are going to learn during the day my entire method of trans-dimensional mapping. And in the evening, Chris is going to be there to help us, and we're going to help him call down the orbs. It's going to be synergistic, magical, and extraordinarily exciting. This is a great way to learn about your own consciousness, to discover your own telepathic and psychic potential, and to meet people from all over the world. We have people coming from Japan to this, people coming from other places who have already let me know that they signed up. They cannot wait. So come join us in August in North Carolina. Again, you can find out about that at ubiquityuniversity.org. And I'm going to turn this back over to Jim. I will be updating my X account and Facebook with lots of photos from the event, so check it out. And if any of you watching this today are here at Contact, come and say hi. I look forward to meeting you. Okay, love you all.
Thank you, Birdie. It is such a good thing to be doing the revolution with good friends and colleagues. And I had the opportunity last night to meet, I know Chris and his wife, Yvonne, but they have, I think, 3 or 4 kids, and they were there with their partners and in a great big huge table, and it was wonderful to meet them. And Chris feels so supported by what we're doing with him and Birdie at Ubiquity University. We're very excited for the August event, as Birdie just described. And we're also working on a journey to Egypt with Chris for Easter of 2026, which we'll be talking about in due course. And one of the reasons why I came to the conference is to meet the travel organizers for this pilgrimage that we'll be convening next spring in Egypt, in dedication to Our Lady. You may know that Chris has been frequented by an extraterrestrial being that is really the Great Mother. It's a deep feminine figure that he's been in communication with, and she comes from Egypt. There's indications from many quarters that 2026 is going to be an unusually seminal time, not only for the human evolutionary journey in a very precarious ecological context, but also for disclosure. Many indications that we're getting very, very close to some kind of major transposition of value and illumination that is going to assist humanity in its awareness of the larger context for our life here on this very precious planet. So all that is in motion, and we'll keep everybody updated. But what I wanted to do now is just provide some data points that have been accumulating over the last several months that we've touched on here and there in our broadcast. But I thought it would be very important to summarize them and bring things together, because they all contribute to the expectancy that I think is in the air around disclosure. I think one of the most important new developments has been what Jake Barber and his company Skywatcher has been doing in the public domain. You'll remember, those of you who track these things, an interview that he did with Ross Coulthart in January, where they showed video of Jake Barber, piloting this big helicopter, and there's this long cord, and at the bottom of the helicopter is this like egg, this egg, and he wasn't sure what it was, but it was like a UFO of some kind, and he's one of these elite special forces guys, out of the U.S. Air Force, and big, heavy set guy, and very military in his orientation. They follow orders. When the high command says go to X place and pick up Y object, you don't ask any questions. You just go in full battle formation to pick up the object. And he picked up the object, and they were flying back to where they were going to deliver it. And all of a sudden, he begins to well up with the most incredible feeling of love and compassion that he's ever felt in his life. And as he's piloting the helicopter, he starts to cry. And he realizes that the consciousness of this egg that he's transporting is communing with him. And that it's a very deeply feminine, maternal, consciousness that was so incontrovertibly true in that moment that he knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that it was real. And for an elite special forces operative trained in professional disengagement with the emotions and with empathy, because it's necessary for the execution of whatever job they've been given to do, to have that kind of experience completely changed his life. And he told about this in the interview with Ross Coulthart on Reality Check. And as he was relaying the incident, he had tears in his eyes. And out of that, he began to realize that this was not only important for him personally, it was important for the world, and that he had a very essential role to play in the next phase of disclosure. So he set up a company called Skywatcher. And Skywatcher has begun for the first time ever as a publicly known company, working with corporations, working with various entities inside the US government, using the latest psi technology that Birdie has been using for the courses that she teaches. Because we humans still need a lot of help in accessing what we've known for thousands of years, but because of our scientific, technical, philosophical developments over the last centuries and so forth, we've lost contact with. So what Jake Barber's doing is really bringing into public awareness the whole field of what is being called psionics. And for me, I believe that this is the most important frontier available to humanity at this moment, which is one of the reasons why we're so privileged to be in partnership with Birdie and transdimensional mapping, because Birdie's using all the technology that Jake Barber's using, plus doing something that nobody's ever done, and that is bringing this into the public domain. And that's important for the reasons that I stated before, that disclosure now is moving beyond the strictures and the control of government into the public awareness. And Ubiquity University is the first university anywhere to start teaching courses on extraterrestrial awareness and communication, because the realm of psionics now is what's up for humanity. How do we use our clairvoyance? How do we develop our mental telepathy? How do we refine our remote viewing capacities to engage in intelligible communication with these beings that have shown up out of other dimensions, from other star systems? We're just in the process of discovering both the complexity and the wonder of where and who these beings are, and the presence of these beings is what, in my view, is going to be the catalyst for the upgrade in consciousness that humanity needs to somehow develop in order for us to look back on our old problems that we couldn't solve, because the consciousness that produces the problem can't solve the problem. It's the ET contact. It's the contact with other species and interspecies communication that catalyzes this upgrade. So this phenomenon of psionics is now in the public parlance, and the activation of this faculty within all of us, even me. I've been taking Birdie's courses, and I've struggled as, this alpha male in a patriarchal culture, very left brain, and so forth and so on. It's not so easy, but it's the easiest thing to do once you let go of who you think you are and what you think is possible. And that's also part of it. This is ultimately learning the language of consciousness, is embarking on a spiritual path of what Plato called the enlargement of the soul. So what Jake Barber and Skywatcher and transdimensional mapping are doing in world culture right now is the cutting edge of the evolutionary journey. And I would encourage every single one of you listening to this broadcast to look into how you can begin to develop these capacities inside yourself, because that's what humanity needs to cultivate. And what we have to work on is developing a critical mass, just enough humans that make this breakthrough in order for the learning of this faculty to get easier and easier and easier. And I want to dwell on this point for a moment, because it's really important to understand the physics. Rupert Sheldrake is an English biologist who I've had the pleasure of knowing since our Cambridge days. He was a student at Cambridge at the same time that I was there. We got acquainted. He's been the leading researcher in the, I would say, the domain of the paraphenomenal. And he's the one that really demonstrated that dogs have these psychic abilities, so that when the owner makes a decision that he or she is going home, they happen to be 50 miles away, the dog immediately knows it and goes to the front door. How does the dog know when his owner 50 miles away has the thought it's time to go home? That's psionics. And Rupert did much research. And by the way, this brilliant man, who's probably done more research on the paraphenomenal and the psychic, has never been given a job at a major university. He's never been allowed to publish in major scientific journals. His TED Talk on the scientific delusion was banned by TED Talk, questioning the scientific paradigm that says that what he's proving is impossible. So, when things come into the world, there's always a resistance. And the great pioneers pay a great price, personally, professionally, sometimes with their own life, for the truth that they're trying to bring into the culture. So that's one part of the equation. The other part of the equation is what Rupert calls morphogenic resonance. You've heard about this fable of the 100 monkeys, right? That when one monkey, as it was reported sort of by legend in a Polynesian island, discovered about that if he washed the coconuts in a certain way, that they tasted better, and he started to wash the coconuts after they were breaking. Other monkeys watched him do that, And within a matter of weeks, more and more monkeys were doing what he was doing. And then they discovered completely miraculously monkeys on other islands that had no contact with the original group of monkeys were doing the same thing. Back to the dog that knows his owner is making a decision to come home and goes to the front door. What is real is the omnipresence of consciousness. And once there's a breakthrough at any level, that makes it easier for other people. They can be on the other side of the world to engage in the same breakthrough. So, for example, it took a genius like Einstein to come up with E equals MC squared. And now every high schooler in the world says, oh, yeah, E equals MC squared. Big deal. Because that's how life transforms itself through the sacrifice of the innovators. But that once the breakthrough is complete, it becomes easier and easier, and a statistical greater and greater percentage of the population begins to engage in these activities with increasing ease. And I think that's this moment that we're at with disclosure after so many decades of repression. The breakthrough's happening. And it came through Lou Elizondo sitting there in the Pentagon and trying to find out information, a red-blooded American boy. And all of a sudden he realized they're not giving him information. He gets mad and he resigns and takes the information to the New York Times. And the New York Times wrestled with, do we publish it? Do we not publish it? And finally, Leslie Kean and others published this article in the New York Times, basically saying that the government knows, and released the famous TikTok videos. It's the first time in history a major newspaper stated part of the obvious. That article is the most read article in the history of the New York Times to the present day. And that's another aspect about truth that I think is important for us to honor as we contemplate disclosure. Everybody already knows it. It's actually not a secret. What is keeping it repressed is our inability and ultimately our fear that if we recognize that which we know to be true, we're going to contradict conventional wisdom. And most of us are more concerned with social approval and conventional approval than the truth. That we not only repress what we know, as Plato said, we will hang a good man from a tree. That's one of the supreme paradoxes of the human psyche. We will actively repress another person from bringing into the public domain the truth that we also know at a deep level of our own interior. Extraordinary complexity of the psyche. But then once it's out, everybody says, yeah. This process, first the government says it doesn't exist. Then the government says that they didn't do it. And then the government said, yeah, we knew it all along and we think it's a great idea. That's how the process of the psyche works. And it's our capacity to understand these complexities that gives us the power to do what we know that needs to be done. And one of the reasons why we're so honored to be in partnership with Birdie and the transdimensional mapping folks, because Birdie, as you all know, has been through her own journey. And the great liberation is it's not personal. It's what all innovators and what all pioneers of the spirit all go through. So the principal virtue at this moment, given this context where breakthrough is what is in order, is an intense integrity of the spirit that doesn't stop whatever the opposition. So it's the perseverance of the soul, as the I Ching puts it, that the superior individual perseveres in the light to dispel the darkness. And it is that mechanism that empowers all of us on our journey to the promised land. So that's one aspect. I just want to touch on one other aspect and bring this to a close. And that is, while all that's going on, there's these people that are continuing to dig away at how the legacy group has been repressing this information. And there's a whistleblower that popped up, kind of out of nowhere, a guy by the name of Matthew Black. And he was on several podcasts a couple of weeks ago only around the Immaculate Constellation. You may remember that Michael Schlossenberg, who was this journalist, again, popped out of nowhere about 6 months ago and said that he'd been in receipt of a document called the Immaculate Constellation that was asserting that not only did the US government know everything, but they had coordinated it in a database. And he testified before Congress in the spring. I was there. It was an incredible moment, and the document was read into the congressional record. If you haven't read it, it's worth reading. It's very, very detailed. And then out of nowhere comes the guy who gave it to Michael Schlossenberg, a guy named Matthew Black. And like Lou Elizondo and like David Grush and like virtually Daniel Ellsberg, if you want to go back to the Vietnam War, he was just this guy, and he happened to have top secret clearance. And he was just beavering away one day, in the office, minding his own business, as it were. And all of a sudden, he was, surfing the internet, and all of a sudden, he found this rabbit hole. He pushes the button, and all of a sudden he goes in and he realizes he's been given access to completely top secret stuff. And he starts to read it. And that was the Immaculate Constellation document that he then released into the public domain, with the assertion that the government knows, the government has taken extraordinary measures to make sure that what it knows is deeply buried, and it's not in the computer system that everybody in the Pentagon or the CIA, they have bundled it up so tightly and hidden it so deeply that you discover it almost by accident. But it's there, and it's coming out into the light of day. Another aspect of this is what's going on right now in the U.S. Congress, where Congresswoman Luna and Tim Burchett from Tennessee and others are working in this special committee on the JFK assassination and the RFK assassination and UFO disclosure. Why has it been kept hidden? So that's been beavering away inside sort of the bowels of the House of Representatives. And there's now new legislation that has been introduced into the Senate, taking to the next level disclosure. Because you'll remember that what happened with the UAP Disclosure Act that was submitted in 2023 by Senator Schumer and Senator Rounds with the support of the Senate Intelligence Committee that voted it out unanimously. It went to the House. And then Mike Turner, the chairman of the Senate or the House Intelligence Community, and the chairman of the House Armed Services Committee killed it. And they didn't quite obliterate it, but what they did is they stripped it of any executive force. So the government went on record that said that technologies of unknown origin and technologies unknown technologies and intelligences were there, and they mandated the government agencies and contracting corporations to turn all the information over to the National Archives, but there was no executive force. This new bill is trying to get executive force so that the U.S. Congress can compel the companies and the contracting corporations to turn over the information that everybody now knows that they have. And in fact, for the first time, there's a coalition that is coming together of the major disclosure organizations that I hope that all of you will sign, because we want by October 20th, Global Disclosure Day, which, as you remember from last year, we developed. We were the ones that came up with the initial Global Disclosure Day. So on October 20th, we're hopeful of submitting to the US government millions of signatures demanding full disclosure to support that process in the House of Representatives and in the US Senate. So that's basically where we are as we convene Contact in the Desert. It's a very exciting moment. We are moving forward with increasing sophistication on how we communicate with extraterrestrial beings. People will be bringing down the orbs at night while we're here out in the desert. We have people, whistleblowers, that are still bringing to light the activities of the Legacy Group and repressing. We've got legislation in the U.S. Government, not only in the Congress, but also there's lots of activity within the Trump administration because Don Jr. is very supportive of disclosure. And President Trump has stated several times that he thinks that this is a very important thing to bring into the public domain. So that's the report from the front line. Birdie and I are now going to go down and join the conference, which is now getting underway. I'll see you next week, next Friday, for a report on what happened here and other areas of human concern as we continue session by session to enable humanity to rise. Thank you, everyone. Bye for now.